Continuing our reading in Yellow Eyes by Rutherford Montgomery, Chapter 19, Treed. Yellow Eyes had spent a lazy night. He had not hunted seriously because he had fed well the morning before. He selected a thicket and lay down just as dawn was painting the sky. The sun wheeled high and laid warm rays upon the grass, which was beginning to show traces of frost kill. The big cat nodded and dozed. He had picked a spot where a square of sun flooded his lank body. Suddenly, he roused himself and listened. Far down the ridge, he heard the baying of dogs. Instantly, he was up and alert. He moved to the edge of the thicket and listened. The pack of hounds was coming up the slope along his trail of the night before. His lips pulled back in a snarl, and he shook his massive head angrily. Then he slipped out of the thicket and loped up the slope. He did not pause until he had located a ledge where he could observe his back trail. From this vantage point, he watched the pack sweep upward. 3 armed horsemen were following the hounds, but Cougar George was not with the pack. He had waited far down the ridge, playing a strategy he hoped would work. He was depending on the stubbornness, the refusal of Yellow Eyes to leave his home range. His idea was that the big cat would double back along the ridge below the timber line. He had placed himself on a narrow hogback, and with him was Mr. Sale and the pack of Airedales. Yellow Eyes waited until the hounds were within half a mile of his lookout before he loped away along the slope. He was strong and felt able to destroy the pack of sad-faced dogs any time they outdistanced their masters. His course led him to the north territory of his hunting ground, the south fork of Roaring River. At the wall of the canyon through which the river roared, he turned back, working his way upward to a level spot just below the naked granite boulders above the timberline. His pace was easy and did not tire him. With his fine body functioning perfectly, he was master of the yelping pack, and he knew it. He paused several times and watched the trailing dogs. A surge of savage power rushed in his veins. Had the dogs been unassisted by the rifles of the men, he would have turned upon them and destroyed them. He knew, however, as every hunted wild thing comes to know, if he survives, that he dare not face the guns of men. On the back trail, he came to a space where a fire had ravaged a steep hillside several years before. Great logs lay charred and twisted in heaps on the side of the mountain. Yellow Eyes paused at the edge of the downed timber. It would be good strategy to cross that slope. The burned strip extended from the ridge above, 2 miles away, down to the bottom of a steep canyon. He knew that the horsemen with their rifles could not cross that stretch of fallen logs. Once he had forced the dogs to leave their master's protection, he could turn upon them. He slipped out on a log and leaped to another. Swiftly he crossed from log to log. Many times he was high above the ground on a bridge of crossed logs. The lack of cover made him hurry. He was clearly in view of anyone hiding in the timber on either side, and he hated the white light of the sun, which was glaring down upon him. It was when he was halfway across that Cougar George, located on the hogback above, spotted him with a pair of binoculars. He shouted to Mr. Sale and to the keeper of the Airedales. The trail hounds had come to the edge of the fallen timber, and the riders saw that Yellow Eyes had eluded them. They did not know that Cougar George was coming down to meet the big cat with the Airedales, so they turned back and led the pack along the edge of the timber, intending to pick up the trail after riding up to the rim and back down. Yellow Eyes crossed on the fallen logs and paused at the edge of the timber. He loped away up the slope at long bounds. His objective was the ledge above, from which he could watch for the approach of the hounds. He was startled upon leaping from a cover of aspen to see 10 bristling dogs of a different breed from the sad-looking trail hounds charging down upon him. This pack was composed of savage fellows who snarled like a pack of wolves as they leaped toward him. They did not run with their noses to the ground, but they had their eyes fixed upon him. He whirled and leaped back toward the fallen timber. As he went, he saw Cougar George and several men riding behind the dogs. Instantly, he leaped away through the timber at great bounds. He outdistanced the riders, but the charging pack could not be shaken. At the edge of the mass of dead logs, he saw that the pursuing trail hounds had disappeared. Leaping out on the logs, he raced for the other side of the open space. His flight was a hurling charge from log to log, his tawny body projecting itself into the air in great leaps. But the Airedales were not to be denied. They rushed savagely into the burnt area, and leaping along the ground, clambering over down timber, and leaped up ahead with powerful lunges. They knew that they must overtake the flying yellow killer soon or lose him. Their experience had been mostly with bears, and they knew no fear. All they asked was a chance to chase and close with any beast. Yellow Eyes reached the last fallen log. Its butt was in a tangle of second-growth spruce. He paused before he leaped from sight. He was not afraid of the snarling demons on his trail, but he did fear the guns of the men. He saw the riders gallop down the ridge toward the edge of the mass of dead logs and halt. A savage challenge rose in his throat. He was being goaded to battle, and now that the men were thwarted, he need not hesitate. Leaping away before the eager jaws of the Airedales, he raced toward a slope where he could make a stand. With his great pads barely resting on the ground after each leap, he bounded up to the opening. Halting, he faced about, his tail lashing and his fangs bared. Here, he would fight to the death with the savage pack. The leader of the pack outdistanced the other dogs and came on without hesitation. He had no thought of waiting to be charged upon by the yellow killer. Yellow Eyes met him with a blow on the side of the head. Leaping back as he struck, his dagger-sharp claws ripped the side of the dog's head into a mass of bloody ribbons. Instantly, the big cat leaped. He sank his fangs into the neck of the stunned brute. Bones crushed, and the leader went limp. Yellow Eyes hurled the dog from him and crouched to meet the onrushing pack. The Airedale swarmed upon him, lashing and ripping. With a single blow, he felled the first one to reach him. Then he went down in a whirling mass of struggling bodies. His great forepaws were lashing and his fangs sank deep each time he found the body of a dog. His powerful hind legs hurled those Airedales aside who attempted to fasten to his hindquarters. 3 dogs, besides the leader, were put out of the fight, either mortally wounded or badly crippled. But the wire hairs knew nothing of the word retreat. They tore the big cat's flanks, ripped his back, and fought to grip his throat. Through sheer weight of numbers, they bore him down. Bleeding and gasping for breath, he hurled them from him, only to have them come charging back from every side. In a last effort to finish the fight, he crushed one of the dogs and finished him, letting the others swarm over him and rip gashes in his side and back. Then he shook them off and leaped toward a tree. The tree he landed on was the sloping trunk of a dead spruce. It leaned out over the clearing at a sharp angle. Yellow Eyes backed out on the smooth, barkless trunk to escape the leaping hounds. Only 5 of the brutes still harassed him, but they had not thought of quitting. The big cat was forced to back far out over the fallen timber into the open to escape their leaps. The king cat was at last treed. Yellow Eyes was shaken and weak. His heaving sides were a mass of bloody lather. His jaws hung open, and his head swayed from side to side. His tail lashed, and he screamed defiantly down at the dogs. For the last time in his life, he was feeling the security of a tree trunk under his feet. He was enjoying the cat's advantage over a dog. Then he heard the shout of Cougar George from across the open space. Cougar George was shouting to Mr. Sale, "He's treed! Get down here if you want to kill him!" The brief breathing spell had allowed the big cat to recover his breath, and he crouched low upon his log. his bloodshot eyes searching for a spot below where his paws could find a hold from which to leap down into a patch of willow below. He found the spot and sailed out into the air. The leap was a full 40 feet, counting the steepness of the slope. The dogs leaped madly down after him, but his hind paws sank into the loose gravel of the mountainside, and he leaped again. This time he landed in the willows. He paused in the cover for a moment. A savage rage filled him. He did not wish to escape. The Airedales were charging down upon him, and he waited. They burst through the willows in a mad charge, nor did they swerve as they saw the king cat crouching before them ready to give battle. The first dog went down, his head ripped to a mass of blood. The other four closed in. The struggle was now more even. Yellow Eyes finished another dog, though in doing so his cheek was laid open by one of the others, and his right flank was torn. He leaped upon one of the remaining brutes and crushed him to the ground. The others were on his back instantly, lashing and cutting. Yellow Eyes hurled the crushed Airedale from him and shook the tormentors from his back. He smashed one of them aside, putting him out of the fight. Then he faced the last dog. The bristling fellow did not hesitate. He hurled himself straight at the throat of the big cat. Yellow Eyes met the rush with a lashing blow of his paw that sent the dog rolling. He waited while the groggy battler staggered to his feet. Without a whimper, the dog charged again, a snarl of rage rumbling to his broad chest. This time Yellow Eyes finished him with a lashing blow that blinded him and sent him staggering down the hillside. The shouts of Cougar George and Mr. Sale were close to the thicket as the big cat leaped into the cover of the heavy timber and loped away. He kept going for perhaps a mile, then crawled into a matted tangle of juniper and rosebriar. There he lay down to lick his wounds and rumble angrily to himself. Cougar George and Mr. Sale soberly took stock of the havoc the big cat had wrought upon the valuable pack of bear dogs. Their keeper arrived and was frantic with anger. Only 3 of the pack could be salvaged. The others were either dead or would have to be shot. "We are quitting," Mr. Sale said grimly. "One of us might meet that fellow and have to fight it out with him." Somebody will shoot him. It'll be an accident, but some hunter or cowboy will do it," Cougar George said hopefully. "I'll raise that reward to $1,000. I want that fellow's hide." And that's the end of chapter 19.